Hello and welcome to the special program on India's national carrier Air India. In this program, we'll discuss the ups and downs of Air India in the decades. We'll also talk about the government's plans to regenerate and pull the airline out of bankruptcy. For 6 decades, the Maharaja ruled the skies before it veered into the controversies of merger privatization. We will study the downfall and we'll also look into the government's effort to revive Air India. At the Civil Aviation Minister Ashok Gajapati Raju's first media interaction after he assumed charge, perhaps the most awaited indication was the new government's stand on the future of national carrier, and what he said came as a surprise to many.
Air India has had a rough time, particularly in recent years, and I think it will be premature today to put a time frame on all this. In the future, hopefully nearer future, they will come out of all this.
So then how was the government going to go about making Air India the profitable venture it had promised? The odds were huge. As per the report submitted to Parliament in 2013-14, Air India suffered losses of 5,300 odd crore rupees. Outstanding aircraft debt stood at over 17,000 crores. Air India had a working capital loan of over 21,000 crore and 7,400 crores worth of non-convertible debts. But there are signals that things are looking up, even if in terms of reduced losses. Between 2009 and 2014, operating losses at Air India declined from 3,800 crore to 2,100 crore rupees, a fall of 44.2%. In the same period, net loss declined from just under 505,000 crores to 5,400 crore rupees. But just this much certainly doesn't mean a revival. Experts in the industry demand much more from the government to turn Air India into a profit-making venture.
Even today, there is no single consolidated civil aviation policy. True. There are policies for other departments, there is no policy for... Yeah, civil aviation is functioning without a policy.
So what is going on with Air India? So what is happening with Air India is that the only hope with Air India today is, it is in such a bad shape, is the only hope is that Star Alliance is going to get it. And India also needs an alliance to create a hub in India.
Some say the recent grounding of Kingfisher Airlines gives Air India hope to reach out to a new passenger base. Aviation experts want the government to come out with a clear-cut approach in running Air India. Privatize it, or at least run it like a private enterprise. To understand Maharaja's travels down the year, let's once look back to its past, the rise and its nosedive. Air India, the name that heralded the dawn of civil aviation in India. In 1948, soon after the independence, the Government of India set up Air India International as the country's first joint venture between the government and the private sector to start an overseas service. J.R.D. Tata launched Air India International as India's first international airline. This small aircraft at the Aero Club in the capital was one of the first in the Air India fleet, a gift from industrialist J.R.D. Tata. It carried postcards between Mumbai and Delhi till 1952. In 1953, government decided to nationalize the aviation sector. Air India became national carrier along with Indian Airlines. Air India represented India at the global stage on VIP visits overseas, ferrying the President, Prime Minister and the Vice President of India, and as the preferred public carrier too, the Maharaja zoomed into the skies.
We used to be proud in my days. We used to be proud when we used to see this Air India aircraft at other airports like New York, London, go to Bangkok, go to Tokyo. The services of Air India at that time was in the top class. It was much better than any of these today's airlines.
It was a jewel in the crown. It was considered very good. It was a very good airline up to a particular year.
Today, Air India has 108 passenger carriers operating across 100 destinations in India and more than 5 countries abroad. Air India's Boeing 787 Dreamliner is world's first fuel-efficient aircraft. But the fact remains, all's not well. In early 2001, the Atal Bihari Vajpayee-led NDA government of the time took a decision to privatize Air India. A deal was even ready to be signed with an alliance between the Tata Group and Singapore Airlines. And then 9/11 happened. Singapore Airlines backed out. The Tatas too decided to pull away.
Tata didn't want to do it alone. They wanted an airline. At that time, airline was allowed, a foreign airline. Yeah. So, but within 2 weeks of that, 9/11 incident in New York took place and the whole airline industry was in doldrums.
Vajpayee government was on the verge of privatizing Air India through strategic sale. They wanted to do for both Indian Airlines and Air India. It was almost going to be done, but there were political differences within the NDA government. So that resulted in a lot of clash.
The UPA's coming to power in New Delhi in 2004 changed the picture completely. Dr. Manmohan Singh's government shunned the privatization idea. A decision was taken to continue with 2 public sector airlines. Down the years, the Civil Aviation Ministry during the UPA years ordered 68 new planes for Air India and 33 for Indian Airlines.
Question is, why did they change the decision to not privatize Air India when Air India was running all right? It was not running on a budgetary support till 2004 or even later. Now, why did they do this? Nobody can answer this question excepting the UPA government itself.
There were 2 separate orders for purchasing aircraft. Indian Airlines was separately purchasing aircraft, Air India was separately purchasing aircraft. Then they were merged. If it was already known that they had to be merged or there was a plan to merge them, then why not a consolidated composite aircraft order for them?
I do not go in for privatization right now, but a public-private deal. For example, you outsource your transportation, right, sir? You remove that establishment cost from here, as and when required, okay? Now, at the same time, in this outsourcing also, you must have a control that the vehicle or the transport system is not being misused. There are ample cases.
The debate extended to questions over whether India even needed a national carrier at all.
US never had a national airline. European countries and other countries had. But over time, they are all disinvesting.
India's seemingly lackluster public sector was compared with bigger, profit-making and highly efficient private entities in Singapore and UAE.
Parliamentary control, CAG and other audits and so on, which is up to a point okay, but they were innovating.
The difficulty has been from the beginning that whether we are service oriented or whether we are profit oriented, how are we going about, there has been a lot of confusion.
Yet, an equally valid case for the government-controlled civil aviation sector stood out too. Singapore Airlines and Japan Airlines were cases in the point. So why couldn't India do the same? Somewhere down the line, the shortcomings in the policy making were visible then, and lack of political will added to the fuel. And adding to that, the merger of Indian Airlines with Air India came as a shock. We'll have that and the government's revival plans after a very short break. May 22nd, 2007. 3 years to the day since UPA 1 took office at the centre. The Civil Aviation Minister of that time, Praful Patel, came up with a landmark announcement: the merger of the 2 national carriers. Was the merger between Air India and Indian Airlines an ill-fated shotgun wedding? Was it a decision taken in haste? Was it necessary at the first place? It's been 7 years, no one knows the exact answer. What we do know was the decision had massive repercussions, not healthy ones in fact. Very soon, besides the complicated human resource issues, the merger began to impact profitability, with losses rising by the year.
There are many factors, but one major factor cited by everybody is merger. Merger per se is not a bad thing. If it is managed properly, if it is done properly, executed properly, it could have been much better.
It is not only financial, what is being painted today. There is some more serious internal problems.
As per the Civil Aviation Ministry data given to Rajya Sabha, Air India has incurred a cumulative loss of over 13,300 crore rupees since its merger in 2007. Prior to the merger in 2006-07, Air India had reported a loss of 447 crore rupees. Indian Airlines reported a loss of 240 crore rupees. Now look at the loss figures immediately after the merger. For 2007-08, a whopping 2,026 crore. That nearly doubled further to 5,548 crore in 2008 and 9. Bankruptcy loomed. Air India didn't have enough money to pay salaries. The merger plan had not achieved what it was supposed to was obvious. And obviously, the backlash was hard, blaming the new policy of being ill-planned and haphazardly implemented.
A merger, in my perspective, was extremely necessary, because you have to harmonize the two airlines.
If it was already known that they had to be merged, or there was a plan to merge them, then why not consolidated composite aircraft order for them? Because then many of the requirement would have been so different for a merged entity than two separate arms.
In his book, The Descent of Air India, former bureaucrat Jitendra Bhargava hits out directly at the merger of two airlines as being responsible for the downfall of the Maharaja. The absence of any civil aviation policy also meant no framework on the working of aviation sector ahead. Any long-term plan on specific roles for departments like DGCA, Airport Authority of India and Air India just did not exist. More decisions, now recognized as faulty, followed, pushing the airline further into the red. With an 8,500 crore rupee turnover, Air India decided to purchase aircrafts worth of 40,000 crore from Boeing. Warnings and advices were blatantly ignored.
To get an aeroplane into the fleet is not just like going and buying vegetables off the shelf. You have to place your orders, you have to see the efficiency of that model, whether it fits into the system or not. All these things have to be examined, and it takes a considerable time. So, was this exercise being carried out? No.
From 2007, the Civil Aviation Ministry started providing additional budgetary support to Air India, but it did not help. From an allocation of 486 crores in 2006-07, the amount has reached over 6,300 crores in 2013-14. During this period, Air India lost its image of a leader in the skies. As discussed earlier, the immediate impact of the merger was a sharp disconnect between the ground level staff and Air India management. With no plans for the merger of these airlines, the airline staff went into a strike, virtually paralyzing the work. Experts say a sharp disconnect between ground level staff and board members on policies contributed heavily to the chaos.
Over time, with the merger never took place properly. For years it went on. I think 7 years old now, merger. Yes. And the merger should have taken place in a year's time. You have to bring together the two personnel.
Vast size of the organization and how to manage it. These were all challenges which have been there for a long time but not addressed properly.
A decision to provide productivity-linked incentives backfired too, as Air India was immersed in losses and debt.
Typical case is the PLI. You know what is PLI? Productivity-linked incentive. My question was very simple. If I am being paid to do a job, and if I am not getting any profit, how is this a PLI applicable to the staff? Simple question. It's a logic.
The chaos within financial turmoil and mismanagement of staff has damaged the image of Maharaja. Adding to that was a sterling competition from private players in India and abroad, ranked it down in the aviation sector in the world. The American Federal Agency downgraded Air India for what it called shortage of safety norms. That move resulted in a forced changing of routes, affecting financials on the India-US route. An impact of that had far-reaching implications.
Now FAA has done some inspections. They used to do it in our time also. Our aeroplanes were boarded by the FAA inspectors and we used to get their reports. Some are good, we learn from them, we correct ourselves. Some are flimsy.
The European Union has also indicated that it will downgrade Air India. As a permanent signatory to UN's International Civil Aviation Organization with bilateral air services agreement with 27 countries, Air India is susceptible to frequent checks and strategic downgradation. Some say action by these nations against Air India only reflects their own vested interests.
Bilateral air services agreement, that gives us the right also to inspect their aeroplanes, reciprocate. The concept of reciprocity is there.
Perhaps the most immediate impact was felt in a sharp decline in the quality of passenger services. Arguments in this direction gather momentum even as the government hints at hiring a professional from the private airline industry. UPM Minister Vaila Ravi even initiated a turnaround plan to improve Air India's financial conditions. As per the plan, Air India would be provided cash support of 4,552 crore rupees till 2017-18. The government would also pay interest on non-convertible debentures of 7,400 crores proposed to be issued by Air India to financial institutions, banks, LIC and EPFO. But despite all these efforts, Air India is struggling to earn money. Narendra Modi's government has inherited the national carrier in shambles. There are several steps initiated by Ministry of Civil Aviation and Air India management. A lot of these programs are already in progress. Air India is presently headed by an IAS officer as chairman and managing director. All executive decisions are left to a 12-member board. A strategic reshuffle in the administration is in the works.
Air India should not do anything against the interests of airport authority, and DGCA as a regulator should just simply do the regulation, whether it is for a private organization or for a government organization. If they all do their job without any fail, without any lapse, then I think the entire sector would function properly.
By improved service delivery to the consumer, on-time performance is also one, isn't it? Coupled with a strong management, making people accountable, making people to know either do the job, do your job properly or out.
So if the government has a will, if they tighten the management of Air India and run it like a private enterprise, they can do it. But it should not be half-baked, half-minded kind of a approach. Either they should do it in full or they should privatize it. It will be a better option.
The government is exploring options on hiring a CMD from the private sector. The Aadhaar project funded by government is their closest example.
Aadhaar as an organization was being run by Nandan Nilekani. He is from the private sector, very well known, and Aadhaar was a government department. Yes. It was possible to run it. Similarly, it is possible, whether it is a private sector person or a retired person or a government employee, whichever way you see it.
A slew of other measures are also in the pipeline. Rationalization of loss-making routes, phasing out of the old fleet and reduction in maintenance cost, shutting down overseas offices at low travel locations or some of them. The proposals have been submitted to Parliament in the budget session. As repeated frequently, reviving Air India's fortunes is among the biggest challenges of the Narendra Modi government. But restoring Maharaja to its original glory is a task it cannot run away from. It's been quite a journey. More downs and very few ups in the recent past. The new dispensation at centre has shown some kind of definitive corrections. Slowly but surely we'll be getting there. From my entire team, Raj Kamal Rao, Rajya Sabha TV.